Perhaps no time of the year to me, as a Christian, is more jarring than when Advent meets Christmas in the United States of America. Consumerism colliding with the sacred stillness, pregnant anticipation. To reckon with this, the week before Advent's first Sunday, I turn off the television advertisements for just a moment and allot myself a cushion of time to prepare my home. For me, this is a sacred practice. I resurrect my grandmother's nativity from the basement, which I was so generously gifted after her passing. I place each cast member on my credenza as I imagine Grandma Juanita still there with me, reminding me of the story in her soothing voice, her encouraging me as I place each sheep and each cow and select the right angel for in the barn and the right one to send out into the field to share the good news with the shepherds. I light the candles and I stand in awe of the lights. My husband sometimes lovingly teases me because inevitably at some point in this ritual I step back mesmerized and I cry. My tears are a mixture of lament and joy. Sadness over loved ones lost, whose memories are always rustled up with the dusty ornaments. Joy for the memories made and the memories to come, for the expectation of Advent. And that mixture of lament and joy, it feels like the foolishness of hope. See, I'm discovering hope can be such a heart-wrenching thing. It can reopen scars we thought had healed. It can lift our eyes just enough to glimpse again the longing that sent us spiraling in the first place. And hope can hurt. That's why Paul once said, it is long. It can hurt in the ways the cynicism of our days seeks to circumvent. Many folks who appear wise and more learned than me have sworn off hope altogether. They say it is for the foolish. So this time of year, they hurry through the Christmas task list without slowing down to ask if those glimmering lights might bring with them a glimmering promise. And some years, I join them. But this year, I hear a passage like this morning's prophecy from Isaiah, and I feel mesmerized again by that nagging companion, hope. There she is. Hope that despite the evidence to the contrary, the house of God is being built, and we are being built into it. All paths will stream to it, and here we will learn a new curriculum. We will learn how to live. It sounds audacious, even privileged, to ignore our worries and look to some future hope. But what Isaiah is suggesting is not that we drop our weariness. Cheer up. Set ourselves out for more hopeful shores. No, Isaiah and the people to which he speaks wouldn't have been able to do such a thing. They couldn't ignore their suffering. It was all around them, closing in on them. Neither I nor Isaiah would be correct nor kind to suggest such a thing. This is an invitation to respond to Isaiah's heralding words of hope by going to the house of God with all of ourselves in tow. Your grief and lament this Advent, bring it. Your broken relationships, bring them too. Your dashed dreams, bring them. All of yourselves, bring it all and hold nothing back. No weapon you're still hiding away to hedge your bets. No weeping you're not sure God can handle. No worry you think is too small to submit to God in prayer. Bring it all. For this is a God who has borne it all amongst us and will use it all, even the broken fragments, to build a new reality. Yes, this is the story we find ourselves in when we choose to claim the name Christian. The story of a God who has used scraps, sin, and even pig slop to build a house for and with us. This is a God who has been building a house with us since the first dust was shaped into a person. A God who has been building a house here since the Israelites were liberated from slavery in Egypt. A God who has been building a house here since kingdoms arose and empires fell. A God who has been building a house here since a young virgin woman asked an angel with a promise, "How can it be?" A God who has been building a house here since our weapons killed the Son of God. A God who has been building a house here since the tomb was empty, the Spirit swept in, and the church was first sent. God has been building since then, before then, and he isn't finished yet. This God has been building here, a house here, not despite our warring madness, not in ignorance of our suffering, but amongst it, right here in the mess of it all. For God's world is God's house, a house where God is pleased to dwell. Hope, then, is not an abstraction. It's not an escape clause used to paint over any pain you might be carrying today. No, hope happens amidst the harrowing realities of being human. Hope happens in stables and in Sunday school classrooms, in hospitals, and in humans. Hope happens here on earth because God lives here. God lives here. In my favorite Advent essay that I reread each year, The Dangers of Advent, the New Testament translator J.B. Phillips puts it this way: "We must never allow anything to blind us to the true significance of what happened at Bethlehem so long ago. Nothing can alter the fact that we live on a visited planet. The earth is God-filled and Christ-haunted, and no more do we feel it than when we strain towards hope this first week of Advent." A few months ago, as I do on a Sunday afternoon, I was reading the morning paper, and I stumbled upon this modern love essay, and I was struck by what children can teach us about hope. The writer, Kelsey Francis, and her husband had a 3.5-year-old son, and they were expecting a little girl due around Christmas time. Devastatingly, around Thanksgiving, the couple delivered a stillborn little girl. She writes that in the weeks that followed, her son asked many questions about his little sister, June. June, they named her. Finally, exhausted by her grief one day, she had no answers to give her son, so she crawled into bed next to him and laid there and listened. And after talking for some time, her son said, "Mommy, you said it's hard to understand what happened to June, but I want it to be soft." "Soft," she writes. I released a deep sigh. I know. I want it to be soft too. Hope are the soft words of a child trying to understand grief. Hope is the light by which we see in the dark. Hope are our weapons transformed into tools for farming and construction. Hope is Jesus Christ serving as that very anvil, refashioning the weapons we create within ourselves and around ourselves, within his very self, for our flourishing, for our eternal hope. What we meant for evil, God used for good. This verse from Genesis is in many ways a summary of the gospel, and it's what we speak of when we speak of hope. not a pie in the sky abstraction, nor a God we cannot reach on some hill far away, not a God who cannot be bothered by our suffering. No, hope is being built by a God who established residency right here, right in the midst and the mire of it all. A God who in Jesus Christ will welcome us to this table to eat of his body and drink of his blood, to sustain us in our living and to meet us in our longing. So let's be a people who inhabit this world knowing it is holy and sacred ground, for it is the house of God. Let us not let the naysayers and cynics within ourselves steer us away from heralding hope for others. Let us notice the glimmering hope within each hard reality and build upon it. Let us see the weapons we fashion with the creativity of our divine Creator. It's the work of the church, I believe, to see hurt, to see hurriedness or hopelessness and offer another path, to extend a hand and an invitation. Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. I'm still figuring out each day how to do this, but I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, good church people who lead me in the light. As a young girl, there was Miriam, who when my ballet schedule was ramping up in my teen years and people in the halls of the church were saying, "We haven't seen you in a while," and kids never put church first. Miriam saw my intense ballet schedule not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. She asked me to come up on a chancel like this one and dance in worship. First, it was a random Sunday to the cliche Lord of the Dance that I now treasure. Next, it was Pentecost, and then it was Easter. And each time, I was transformed by dancing in worship. See, there was no liturgical dance group, no special programming commissioned by the session, just a simple invitation. "Come," she said, "let us dance in the light of the Lord." And then she sent me a letter thanking me for sharing those gifts with the church, reminding me they were a gift from God and it was my responsibility to steward them. And in so doing, she kept me tethered to the reality that God lives here, on earth, in humans, in ballet studios, and yes, in the church. God lives here. There was Nancy, who my family sat directly in front of each Sunday in worship. She joyfully passed the peace with me, noticing how I'd grown and tolerating it very peacefully when I was a little too noisy in worship. She was active in the congregation and in our community, and she had a quiet faithfulness about her that I still can sense when I remember her. I would walk hand in hand with her in crop walks to raise money to combat hunger. In December of 1997, my family was struggling financially due to my parents' divorce. And money being tight and Christmas being around the corner, I knew that my mother's heart was heavy, and her and Nancy were very close. Nancy arrived at our door with 2 big grocery bags full of all of the normal fixings for our annual Christmas cookie baking. "Come," she said, "let us walk in the light of the Lord." I've come to believe through experiences like these that a house of God is built in part by the church. A church filled with people like Miriam who see possibility where others see limitation. A people like Nancy who see hardship and run towards it, not away. A people like my grandmother whose nativity and Bible lessons are still with me. A people who plant seeds in the winter of our lives, trusting spring will come and the light will dawn. As we do this with them, as we walk in the light as God's church, our very alternative way of inhabiting this world with hopefulness will offer people another path. We will be that living invitation that says, "Come, Let us walk in the light of the Lord. And our original inviter, God, is here now, inviting us still. For Christ is standing at that door, knocking, asking, "Come, won't you? Let us walk in the light." Do you hear him knocking? Do you see a new light dawning? The light by which we see everything else. The light who is coming into the world and who no darkness can overcome. The invitation exists. The God of Advent bids you come. And any who receive the invitation and go will discover that the God who humbly made his home here in Bethlehem is making a home here still. In any human heart who will have him, in any church who will worship him, in any people who will proclaim him. Friends, if you're willing, if you're wondering, if you're wandering, let us go. Let us walk in the light of the Lord. Let us dwell in the house of God. Amen.